everyone, welcome back to Actual English. I'm Jennifer Clyde. It's time for lesson 202 and today's topic is secret ballot. Now, a secret ballot is a method of voting that ensures that the voter is or the voter's choice is kept secret. So, most voters, they don't want to be influenced by other individuals. Then they may choose to vote in secret. Now, this is what we call a secret ballot. Let's say, for example, I'm not quite sure about Korea, but let's say in America, for example, all presidential elections are using the method of secret ballots. And of course, in many other elections as well, especially if the voters want to remain anonymous. If they don't want to say or be out there to let people know who they voted for, yes, they can say, I would rather prefer a secret ballot. Let's talk about that today. Let's begin with actual talk.
I think the whole idea about secret ballots is that it eliminates bias,
right.
Which is obviously a good thing. But I have sort of read that there are sort of two sides, and it's not always good news. I mean, for example, in the UK, it's not completely anonymous still.
Oh, really?
Because you still have a number on every ballot paper.
Oh.
So, in theory at least, there could be some sort of dirty underhand things going on.
So they can technically trace it back to you if they really wanted to?
Technically, you could chase it back.
Wow, okay. Yeah, I think secret ballots, of course there's two sides to it, but I think in general, to eliminate the bribery that happens or to intimidate people to vote a certain way, it's good on that aspect where, people don't have to fear that, I'm making this decision and I'll get in trouble for it or whatever, all this hate. But then I think also in certain situations, though, when you see like unjust votes, you can't really trace it back to who would make such a vote or things like that. So I think, it's very pros and cons.
Yeah, I think overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah, definitely.
Things these days are changing quite quickly. I mean, a few years ago, it seemed to be just paper ballots.
Right.
But you were just saying earlier that things have changed where you live in the States.
Yeah, so I remember when I voted, I think it depends on the state, I'm not sure. But when I voted, it was all electronic. So I think in that aspect, it's kind of more efficient and faster maybe, especially when it comes to counting votes. But maybe sometimes it could be like technological errors.
Yeah, because I was thinking there's always that element, isn't there, with new technology and using electronic stuff that things can get changed during the process.
Yes, I think it's still trying to figure out what's the best and most efficient way and safest way to vote, I think.
Sure, absolutely.
So once again, today's topic is secret ballot. Simply put, voting in secret. All votes are cast in secret, where the voter's name, for example, is unknown. It's anonymous. So today we had Michelle and Eugene talking about secret ballots. Let's find out in detail what they talked about. Now, Eugene began by saying, I think the whole idea about secret ballots is that it eliminates bias. We've got two vocab words. Okay, let's take a look at eliminate and bias. Eliminate means to take out, take away. Okay, or to get rid of, to throw out, throw away, okay? To leave out, for example. I've given you very similar phrases with the same definition. And bias is what? You may think that bias and prejudice are the same. Yes, it's true, they are very similar to a certain extent, but basically we're talking about preconceived opinions, for example. Okay, judgments made beforehand. But usually, bias can be favorable and unfavorable. But prejudice usually implies unfavorable opinions about something, okay, or thoughts, or judgments. So, let's take a look at this sentence once again. I think the whole idea about or of secret ballots is that it eliminates bias. It takes it away. It eliminates, it takes away things such as bias, which is obviously a good thing. Of course it's good. But I have read that there are sort of two sides. Okay, we're talking about two sides. Perhaps he's talking about a positive side and a negative side. We often talk about the pros and cons of something. So that is what he means by having two sides, a good side and a bad side. And it's not always good news. For example, let's take a look at an example that Eugene has mentioned. In the UK, it's not completely anonymous because you still have a number on every ballot paper. Okay, we've got a vocab word and a pattern in this sentence. So, as we see, Eugene has given us an example of how things are in the UK. He says in the UK, it's not completely anonymous. Anonymous. This word means unknown, especially an unknown name. So, if you say that you got an anonymous letter or anonymous gift, you're saying that you received a gift but no name was written on it, meaning you have no idea who the sender is. So he's saying it's not completely anonymous, meaning it doesn't mean that people's names are not told or unknown. Why? Because you still have a number on every ballot paper. A ballot paper basically is a paper that's used for voting, okay? A paper that you would write down the name of the person that you vote for, that is called a ballot paper, okay? We'll practice that in a sentence later on. So let's move on. And he says, so there could be some sort of dirty, underhand things going on. That's another word we have here, okay? What does underhand mean? I'll give you an example. Okay, try to guess what underhand means. Now, I'm taking an exam in class, okay, and I have a cheat sheet, which means that I have a piece of paper with notes written down on them, answers to the test, questions. And what I do is, I put my hand under and give it to a friend of mine. Now, what are you doing? You're giving your friend your cheat sheet, but you're doing it secretly, okay, with bad intentions because it's against the rules, right? So underhand basically means to do something that's quite bad secretly, okay? So underhand. Keep in mind that underhand basically means that you were doing something secretly, okay? Secretive is a synonym for underhand. So he's saying, there could be some sort of dirty underhand things going on. Dirty meaning wrong. So there could be wrong things happening behind people's backs. People don't know, but it's happening, okay? Secretly. Now, Michelle says they can technically trace it back to you if they really wanted to. Now, if they wanted to, they could trace it back to you. That's the question. Trace something back to something or someone means to follow the footsteps of something or the trail or the tracks of something and find out where it came from, for example, or what it is or who it is. So she's basically saying, so if somebody does something wrong or somebody does something, for example, you could trace it back to that person, meaning even if it is unknown, the person has not written down his or her name on that secret ballot, could people eventually find out, trace it back to that person? And he's saying, yes, technically you could trace it back. Whole point is, yes, you could find out who the person is or what that is. Well, she says, but I think in general, be it to eliminate the bribery or to intimidate people to vote a certain way, it's good that people don't have to fear that, I'm making this decision and I'll get into trouble for it or whatever. Now, this is one long sentence. Let's take a look at bribery here. She says, I think in general, be it to eliminate the bribery. We have eliminate once again. Eliminate bribery. Take away bribery. Keep bribery out. Now, what is a bribery? It's the act of actually giving someone money, for example, it's usually money. You can bribe someone by giving them money and say, shh, take the money and do this for me, for example. So she's saying that by doing so, maybe you can take things such as bribery out, you can eliminate that, or, intimidate people to vote a certain way. She's saying it's good that people don't have to fear. They don't have to be afraid and think, oh, I'm making this decision, I'm voting for this person, I'm doing this, and I'm going to get in trouble for it if they find out who I am. So she's saying that secret ballots are good in that people don't have to be afraid of this. Okay, let's now move on. But then also in certain situations, also in some other situations, when you see unjust votes, we're talking about unfairness, unjust votes, you can't really trace it back. So this is really tricky. It can be A, it can be B. Sometimes it almost seems as A and B, so it's tricky what they're talking about. Anyhow, Eugene says yes or yeah, things these days are changing quite quickly. I mean, a few years ago, it seemed to be just paper ballots. Right? We're talking about, once again, paper ballots, the paper that we actually write things down when we vote for someone. But you were just saying that things have changed in the States. So now he's making a comparison of how things used to be years and years ago. But since Michelle has mentioned something about how there have been changes in the States, he says, yeah, but you were saying that things have changed in the States. So he wants her to tell him more. She says, I remember when I voted. I think it depends on the state, meaning it's different depending on each and every state. I'm not sure, I don't know, but it was all electronic. Okay, it was all electronically done. Now we're talking about voting in this case. So she says, so I think it's kind of more efficient and faster, especially when it comes to counting votes. That's true. So imagine that you have tons and tons of paper, okay? And you have to count each and every vote. Well, that could take a long time. So she's saying that if things are done electronically, okay, if you can vote electronically, it will save you much more time. It'll be more efficient and faster. But sometimes there could be technological errors. We're talking about electronic technology, technological errors. There could be problems. Yeah, because I was thinking there's always that element, isn't there? With new technology and using electronic stuff or doing things electronically, things can get changed during the process. Things can get changed, you see? In this case, you are not changing something intentionally. You're not doing it purposely, but if something gets changed, it is changed by someone or something, usually not intentionally, unintentionally. So he's saying things could change during the process. Yes, so I think they're still trying to figure out, find out, come up with something, and they're trying to figure out what's the best, most efficient, and safest way to vote. And of course, he agrees and he says, sure, absolutely. So yeah, I think often people, when they vote, they may think, is someone being bribed? What if someone finds out who I voted for? What if 10 people voted for A, but they say, oh, 10 people voted for B? What if there's something dirty going behind, So I think these are the things that they were talking about. But the point is, people are trying to come up with, okay, they're trying to figure out what's the best, most efficient, and safest way to vote. All right, got that point? Let's take a listen to the conversation one more time.
I think the whole idea about secret ballots is that it eliminates bias,
Right.
Which is obviously a good thing. But I have sort of read that there are sort of two sides, and it's not always good news. I mean, for example, in the UK, it's not completely anonymous still.
Oh, really?
Because you still have a number on every ballot paper.
Oh.
So in theory, at least, there could be some sort of dirty underhand things going on.
So they can technically trace it back to you if they really wanted to.
Technically, you could chase it back.
Wow, okay. Yeah, I think secret ballots, of course there's two sides to it, but I think in general, to eliminate the bribery that happens or to intimidate people to vote a certain way, it's good on that aspect where, people don't have to fear that, oh, I'm making this decision and I'll get in trouble for it or whatever, all this hate. But then I think also in certain situations, though, when you see like unjust votes, you can't really trace it back to who would make such a vote or things like that. So I think, yeah, it's very pros and cons.
Yeah, I think overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, things these days are changing quite quickly. I mean, a few years ago, it seemed to be just paper ballots.
Right.
But you were just saying earlier that things have changed where you live in the States.
Yeah, so I remember when I voted, I think it depends on the state, I'm not sure. But when I voted, it was all electronic. So I think in that aspect, it's kind of more efficient and faster maybe, especially when it comes to counting votes. But maybe sometimes it could be like technological errors.
Yeah, because I was thinking there's always that element, isn't there, with new technology and using electronic stuff that things can get changed during the process.
Yes, I think it's still trying to figure out what's the best and most efficient way and safest way to vote, I think.
Sure, absolutely.
Now, we have been going over some difficult topics. Today we're talking about secret ballots. And I've chosen some words, more compared to our previous lessons, just to help you understand the definition, the meaning of these words. And in order to help you, I have picked out several synonyms that go along with each and every vocab word. Okay? So here we go with actual expressions. First of all, vocab words. Eliminate. Stress goes right there on the second syllable. Eliminate. Eliminate. It means to remove. Omit, which also means to take out. You're getting rid of something. What about bias? Bias. It's not bias, it's bias. Bias. Very similar to prejudice, but I did tell you the difference. Usually bias can be favorable and unfavorable. Okay, so preconception or favoritism, preference or partiality. Okay, preconception I would say is probably the closest synonym. What about anonymous? Anonymous. This is a tricky word to pronounce. Let's try it 2 times together. Anonymous. Anonymous. Very good. Now, if you say that something is anonymous, you are saying that the name is unknown. It's from or by a person in which you don't know the name of. So, unknown or undisclosed would be a synonym for anonymous. Moving on to underhand. Stress goes right here, underhand. Imagine that you are doing something underhand, under the table. You're doing it in secret. Or another synonym is secretive, dishonest, sneaky, or deceptive. Okay? Usually if you say underhand, it means that it is not open. It's not open. It's done in secret. What about bribery? Here we go, bribery. Bribe is just another word for hush money. This is informal and slang. Okay? Hush money is just a synonym for bribery. Usually money, right? Unjust. Unjust means dishonest or unfair. Unjust. And finally, we have ballot. Ballot, we've been talking about secret ballots or ballot paper. We're talking about a ticket, meaning the paper that we actually vote on, and some other synonyms are poll and tally as well. You may come across the word tally quite commonly when you talk about elections and voting. Okay, now let's move on to our patterns for today. Ballot paper. Okay, ballot paper is what? It's the piece of paper that you usually vote on or write down who you are voting for. I couldn't believe that almost every ballot paper was a vote for JC. JC, I tried to come up with a name that's just short for Jennifer Clyde, so JC. So what you are saying that is, wow, I could not believe that every paper, every tally, poll, ticket, every ballot paper was a vote for JC. Okay, it means I couldn't believe everybody voted for JC. Moving on, trace someone or something back to someone or something. We're talking about following the trail or the tracks of something to find out where it originated from, for example. It took me weeks, a long time, to trace the letter back to my secret admirer. Trace the letter back to who? My secret admirer. What is a secret admirer? Okay, a secret admirer doesn't have to do anything with secret ballots or voting, but secret, simply put, admirer, someone who admires you, someone who is in love with you even sometimes. So a secret admirer is someone that is interested in you, someone likes you or loves you, but in secret. Okay, so you got a letter from somebody. It was an anonymous letter, but it took you weeks to find out who the sender was. It took me weeks to trace the letter back to my secret admirer. Okay? So that about does it for today's actual expressions, everyone. Go over every single vocab word. We had many of them for you today, and practice these patterns more on your own as well. All right, job well done.